They say time forgets everything, but some places don't age. They just wait. Wait in silence, in shadows, in memory. And sometimes they record. Deering, Washington, was never on any map you'd recognize. Tucked deep into the forested edges of the Olympic Peninsula, it was a town built for simplicity, routine, and retreat. No tourists, no headlines. Just 327 souls living by their own rhythm. Until October 12, 1972, the day the clock stopped ticking. That morning, Deering was like any other. School buses pulled up to the red-bricked elementary school. The cafe on Main served its usual weak coffee and oversweet pies. And a mechanic named Hal Greaves was seen unlocking his garage at 8:04 a.m. Then, silence. By sundown, the town was abandoned. No bodies, no signs of struggle. No fires, blood, or weather disasters. Just a ghost shell of life. Dinners half eaten, lights still on. A wedding dress in a storefront window, untouched. The investigation lasted less than 6 weeks. Authorities blamed mass migration, an environmental scare, or unsubstantiated hysteria. The files were sealed, and Deering became nothing more than a whispered warning, a forgotten town for curious hikers and local ghost stories. Except Deering wasn't done speaking, because deep in the tower above the old town hall, something had been left on. In 1969, the U.S. Department of Infrastructure and Emergency Preparedness had chosen Deering as a quiet testing ground for rural surveillance infrastructure. A pilot program. A single camera installed in the bell tower, pointing over the center of town, designed to monitor daily human activity, light patterns, and weather fluctuations. It was independent, hardwired, with its own power generator, and most disturbingly, its own memory archive. For nearly 5 decades, that camera kept recording. Footage was quietly stored and updated once a year by a research team who rarely asked questions. But in 2021, a data scientist assigned to digitize archival government materials opened the Deering file. What she found triggered an internal investigation, a short-lived media frenzy, and a hard shutdown by federal officials. But not before the footage leaked, and what it shows defies everything we thought we knew about disappearance, memory, and time. This is not just a story about a town that vanished. It's about what remained, what watched, what waited, and what still moves through the streets of Deering long after every name was erased. The last day of light. At 7:42 a.m. on October 12, 1972, the first frame of that day's reel begins. It's grainy, static heavy, black and white, but the camera captures everything with haunting clarity. The school's American flag flutters lightly in the wind. A man with a brimmed hat, later identified as Lester Vane, the postmaster, crosses the intersection with a bundle of letters under his arm. The grocery clerk adjusts a fruit stand display. A dog barks off screen. It's all normal. At 8:09 a.m., the school bell rings. Children are seen entering in lines. 8:15, a woman opens the blinds of her second-story apartment. 8:23, a delivery truck pulls up to Merton's General Hardware. And then, at exactly 8:47 a.m., something changes. A brief flicker. It's easy to miss. The footage distorts for just a split second, a glitch across the lower third of the screen. And when it returns, everything is still, more still than before. No movement, no cars passing. The American flag stops waving, but the trees move. The wind continues. Shadows stretch, but not a single human shape moves. The children never come out for recess. The shopkeeper never finishes his sign. The dog never barks again. It's like someone pressed pause, but only on the people. At 12:01 p.m., the sun peaks. Light washes over the street. The town glows with eerie stillness. And then, the first anomaly appears. In the reflection of the dress shop window, a figure, but not in front of the window in the reflection. It moves, slowly, deliberately, wearing no visible clothing, no distinguishing features, just shape. But when the camera pans, the street is empty. Frame after frame, the figure reappears only in glass, in mirrors, puddles, even in the chrome hubcap of a parked car. It watches, lingers, but never steps into direct view. By 6:45 p.m., the sun begins to set. Still no humans. No lights turn on. At 7:10 p.m., the final visible change occurs. The doors of the school, which had remained closed all day, are wide open. But there's no transition. One frame, closed. Next frame, open. Inside, darkness. Nothing more. That was the last normal footage ever recorded in Deering. Every day after, the camera rolled, capturing still streets, empty windows, occasional animal activity, and once, in 1984, what looked like a candle flickering inside the church basement. The footage was ignored for years, lost in bureaucratic systems, classified by default, assumed redundant, until someone asked, if everyone was gone, who kept the doors unlocked, and who lit the candle? But the better question might be, what if they never left? What if something else moved in? And this is only the beginning. The man who didn't leave. The last census report to include Deering was from 1970. It recorded 327 residents to 85 families, 12 children under 5, a mayor, a deputy sheriff, and one man named Bernard Holloway. He lived on the outskirts, just past the old lumber yard, in a pale yellow bungalow surrounded by pine. Everyone in town called him Mr. Holloway, quiet, retired, a widower. No known family. Formerly a cartographer for the U.S. Geological Survey. He didn't own a car, didn't use the phone, bought the same groceries every Friday at 2 p.m. Canned beans, powdered milk, and occasionally licorice. He wasn't seen on October 12th, but he was seen after. In 1975, 3 years after the town's disappearance, a group of urban explorers, back then simply curious hikers, trekked through Deering. It had already become a myth by then, the story of the town where time stopped. Local police would occasionally patrol the entrance roads to dissuade trespassers, but enforcement was lax. The hikers filmed with a handheld Kodak. Their footage, though rough and brief, shows details the surveillance camera never could. One of those details is the unmistakable silhouette of a man watching them from the window of Holloway's house. When the film was analyzed in 1993 during a retrospective documentary on American ghost towns, experts believed it was a trick of the light. But then came the letter. It was postmarked from Port Townsend, Washington, in 1981, addressed to a now-defunct paranormal newsletter. The handwriting was thin, angular, almost mechanical. The note read, "They never went anywhere. They folded. Like paper, the town is still here, but only at angles. I watch, I listen. The camera does not see me, but the mirrors do." BH? The editor dismissed it as a hoax. But when the footage leak occurred in 2021, someone tracked down the original film reel from the hikers. Frame by frame, they enhanced the image. And under better light, behind the cracked second-floor window of the Holloway house, stood an unmistakable figure. Older, bearded, holding what appeared to be a folded map. And something else, a mirror. Not facing himself, facing outward. Who was he watching? And why didn't the camera in the bell tower ever record him leaving? The power to that area of town had failed long before 1980. There was no running water, no deliveries, no fuel. But every few months, reports surfaced from hikers, researchers, or nearby townsfolk. a man spotted along the old dirt road leading out of Deering. Always alone, always carrying a bag, and always heading back in. In 2007, a geocacher named Riley Nunez documented a strange phenomenon near the edge of Deering. His GPS refused to update coordinates. His phone battery, fully charged, dropped to 2%. Static bled into the mic of his GoPro, and in the distance, caught faintly in the audio, was what sounded like humming, a melody, a male voice. The lyrics were never clearly caught, but one line was deciphered: "Fold the town like ribbon ends." What could that mean? The best theory comes from topological physics, a theory of space-time warping. Folding doesn't mean disappearing. It means collapsing into itself, becoming imperceptible, but not absent. What if Bernard Holloway wasn't caught in the event? What if he caused it? Remember, he was a cartographer. He understood landscapes, grids, ley lines. And maybe, just maybe, he found a way to turn Deering into a place that no longer had to follow the rules of time, where doors open without movement, where figures exist only in reflection, where a town isn't gone, it's just turned sideways. And if Holloway really is still there, watching, mapping, folding, then the next question is, who is he folding it for? The children of static. In the early spring of 1986, nearly 14 years after Deering's disappearance, two boys, Travis and Lenny Markham, were playing in the woods that bordered the eastern perimeter of what was once the town. They weren't looking for Deering. They didn't even know the name. The town had long since been removed from most local maps. The boys were searching for arrowheads. What they found was a clearing filled with silence. Not the kind of silence you get in the middle of the forest. This wasn't birdsong interrupted by wind. This was total silence, the kind that presses on your eardrums. Lenny said later that it felt like being underwater. Travis, too scared to speak, pointed ahead. There, at the edge of a fallen fence, sat a television. An old one, heavy, tube screen, rabbit ear antenna, crooked like a spider's legs. It was on, not plugged in, not warm, but on. The screen didn't show static, not exactly. It was a shifting pattern of black and gray, slow, deliberate, almost rhythmic. A pulse, and every few seconds, a line of text would appear at the bottom. Just one word at a time. Then gone. Lenny, who wrote everything in his notebook like a habit, recorded what they saw. Later, his parents would find the torn page hidden beneath his mattress, written in pencil. Return, refold children again. Again begin return, return, return. They never saw the town. But they weren't the only ones who found the clearing. In 1991, a man named Daniel Hoot, a researcher from a fringe parapsychology institute, wrote a paper titled The Phenomenon of Spatial Memory in Abandoned Structures. It was largely ignored, but buried within it was an appendix about broadcast residues from presumed defunct technology. One case referenced a forest near an unnamed town in Maine, where a signal had been detected on shortwave radio, a signal that mimicked a child's voice counting from 1 to 12, then pausing, then weeping. But there were no children left in Deering, or so we thought. In 1999, a group of filmmakers attempting to recreate a Blair Witch-style documentary entered the Deering perimeter with hidden cameras. They never released their footage. Their lead cinematographer, Max Pruitt, vanished on the third day. No foul play was determined. No body was found. The only remaining record was an audio log recovered from his assistant's bag. At the 28-minute mark, the group hears something, not in front of them. Behind the trees, voices, high-pitched, off-key. Children singing, no melody recognizable, no lyrics comprehensible. Just overlapping sounds, like different tracks playing at once. And then, clear as a whisper, the folding wasn't done. A second later, the tape cuts to pure static. Pruitt was never found. But here's where it gets more disturbing. That same year, a teacher in upstate New York reported a student, a foster child with no known history of trauma, who began compulsively drawing strange buildings, tall spires, windowless walls, rooms that looked like classrooms, but the chalkboards were made of glass. The boy would say only 3 words when asked where he got the idea. I remember Deering. He had never lived in Maine. He had never heard of the town. But in one drawing, the television was there, complete with the same antenna and pattern as described by Travis and Lenny. And behind the television, a mirror, not reflecting the boy, reflecting a girl standing behind him. A girl no one in the classroom had ever seen. The image was sent to a forensic artist for analysis. She concluded the drawing was based on a real face. Distinctive features. Symmetry, too, exact for fantasy. A girl looked about 10 years old, and she bore a striking resemblance to Abigail Klein, one of the last recorded residents of Deering, a child listed as missing on the 1972 registry. Abigail was born in 1962. She'd be 61 today. But in every report, every sighting, every shadow behind the reflection, she's still 10. As if she too had been folded, preserved, like the camera, like the signal, like the silence, like the town itself. And if the children are still there, watching from the folds, or worse, remembering us, then the question becomes, what happens when they start unfolding back into our world? The mirror in the church. In almost every town across rural America, there's a church that looks older than time. Its steeple crooked by weather. Its pews worn smooth by generations. Its windows colored with fading saints, whose eyes never seemed to meet yours. Deering had such a church. It sat at the edge of a dried-up lake bed, nestled between a collapsing cemetery and the tree line that had begun swallowing the fence, meant to keep nature out. The church's name was St. Elaine's. No one remembers who Elaine was. The records vanished with the town. But St. Elaine's had one thing no other chapel around it had: a mirror. A massive vertical mirror, installed where the crucifix would normally hang. The mirror, by all archived accounts, was donated in 1946 by a man named Pastor Matthias Rau, who claimed it was a gift of holy clarity to reflect the soul's readiness for judgment. But there was something off about it, even back then. It wasn't mounted to the wall. It was embedded into it, flush, seamless, part of the structure. A dark, silver surface surrounded by stone. Parishioners noticed it immediately. It didn't reflect the altar, as it should have. If you sat in the front rows, you'd see yourself, but not the priest behind you. If you stood in front of it directly, your reflection was off by half a second, delayed, as if the mirror were thinking about what you looked like before answering. And children refused to go near it. In a journal recovered from a private collection in Cortland, one entry, dated March 1970, described a Sunday school student, 8-year-old Rebecca Tunney, who refused to enter the church after class. The girl screamed and said the mirror showed her grown up and crying. She said her grown-up self told her to run from the sound of folding. None of us understood what she meant. That entry was the last ever recorded in the journal. Rebecca's family disappeared along with the rest of Deering 2 years later, but St. Elaine's remained. When the 1982 aerial survey of the forested region was conducted, the satellite picked up the outline of a building in infrared. The rest of the town? Obscured by overgrowth, cloud cover, or absent. But the church was visible, glowing, not from external light, but from retained thermal signature, as if it had been absorbing heat from something deep beneath the foundation. A research team entered the site in 1995, funded quietly by a private tech investor from Boston obsessed with the paranormal. They never reached the church. Their equipment failed 600 yards from the perimeter. One member reported, before contact was lost, that they'd found a wall of mist that looped back on itself. Looped, back, folded. But the mirror story didn't end there. In 2007, a homeless man was found in Bangor screaming about silver angels that kept asking him to confess backwards. When authorities brought him in for medical evaluation, he was found to have a tiny etched scar on the back of his left eyelid. A number, faint but legible, ELN 7312, when cross-referenced. That sequence matched a construction permit code for St. Elaine's, filed in 1947. The man had no history of ever living in Deering. No known relatives there. No criminal record. But he told the attending nurse something that chilled her for years. I saw myself once, when I wasn't looking. To the mirror. It told me I didn't leave. Leave where? She asked. He didn't respond. He simply stared at the blank wall and whispered, "You're still there too." In 2011, footage began circulating on obscure web forums of a mirror allegedly recovered from a reclaimed church project in Maine. The video was 7 minutes long, shaky, filmed in a dimly lit storage room. In it, a man off camera tests the mirror's reflection with his hand, flashlight, and face. It behaves normally until the 6:42 mark. The reflection shows the flashlight pointed away, not toward the mirror. Then the man steps aside, and in his place, a small child, standing alone, head slightly tilted, mouth moving but no sound. A time stamp begins flashing in the lower corner of the mirror, not on the video, but in the mirror itself. 9 hours 14 minutes and 33 seconds. The 12th of December 1972. The precise moment the last known citizen of Deering was seen on camera before the town signal went black. That video was removed 48 hours after it was posted. The user account was deleted. The mirror hasn't resurfaced since. Some believe the mirror was never a mirror, that it was a window, a frame, an anchor for something that wanted to be remembered. And if that's the case, then perhaps the church wasn't just a place of worship. Perhaps it was the first fold, the point where space and memory began to collapse inward, reflecting not just the people of Deering, but their regrets, their shadows, their unfinished thoughts. And maybe, if you stand in front of the mirror long enough, you'll see something watching you back. Not a ghost, not a spirit, but you, fractured, bent, remembered differently, because in Deering, you never truly left. The final broadcast. It was 11:13 p.m. on a cold Sunday in January 1972 when the last known signal from Deering, Maine was received. The broadcast came from the town's public access channel, Deering Local 6, a low-frequency UHF signal that was mostly used to air school announcements, mayoral addresses, and holiday programming. It wasn't monitored in real time by any major network. But on that night, a technician at a relay station in Burlington, Vermont, noticed something strange while conducting routine signal sweeps. A channel that was supposed to be silent was active, transmitting. The signal didn't match the usual resolution or format. The image was distorted. No station identification, no static, no test pattern. Just a black screen with one flickering phrase. Deering, may stand by for retransmission. Then it cut to video. No intro, no sound, just a live feed. At first, the camera was aimed down a hallway, long, narrow, dimly lit, the kind you'd find in a municipal building. A bulletin board on the left wall, fluorescent lights above. The timestamp in the corner read, January 15th, 1972, 23 hours 14 minutes and 3 seconds. The frame didn't move. No one appeared. But about 30 seconds in, a sound emerged, not from the audio track, but visibly, like air shifting. The camera lens began to fog, though the temperature reading in the metadata showed 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Then something passed by, blurred, fast, a shape, a shadow. It was impossible to say. The video glitched. When the feed resumed, the hallway was empty, but the bulletin board now had something new pinned to it. A Polaroid photograph. Zoomed in later by analysts, it showed what appeared to be a classroom. Empty desks. A chalkboard that read, "It's okay now." The video continued. For 17 minutes. No cuts, no edits, no movement. Until, without warning, the camera shifted, as if someone behind it turned it manually. It panned slowly toward a door labeled Archive 1B. That door opened. By itself. And inside, shelves, hundreds, rows stretching beyond what the lens could capture. Not books, not files, TVS, old CRT televisions, all powered on, dozens of them, each displaying a different location in Deering, or so it seemed. One screen showed the gas station on Willow. Another showed the diner. Another, the school gym. Another, the woods outside town. The strange part? All of them showed activity. People walking, talking, children playing, a band rehearsing. But in every shot, without exception, no one faced the camera. They were always turned away, as if they didn't know they were being watched, or refused to acknowledge it. And across the top of every TV, loop active Sector 12. What was Sector 12? No one knows. The signal began to pulse. The technician, now joined by two others, started recording manually. But before they could finish, the feed cut again, this time to a new image. A static-filled screen. Then, you are watching what remains. Then, they never left. Then, are you with you, S? Then, YNA blinking cursor. That's when the technician said something that, to this day, remains unexplained. We didn't type anything. But the screen answered anyway. It typed, "Why the feed shut down." The technician sent the recording to state authorities. 3 days later, the tape disappeared. The technician was let go under mental duress. His co-workers were reassigned. And Deering Local 6 was declared permanently inactive. But fragments of the footage survived. They began surfacing on old VHS compilations in the early 2000s. Grainy, low-quality tapes labeled things like Lost Signals or Forbidden TV. Reddit users in the early days of the platform would share screenshots, trying to enhance the image clarity. One poster claimed they'd identified a missing child from Pennsylvania in the diner. Another said their grandfather recognized his old truck parked outside the fire station, a vehicle that had been scrapped in 1975. But perhaps the most disturbing post came from a user in 2016 who uploaded a 10-second clip. The footage? A close-up of a television screen from the archive room. A hand, gaunt, pale, places something on the shelf below one of the TVs. It's a tape. Label reads, "Deering exit log number 001. Then the camera pans slightly, catching the reflection in the glass. It's the viewer, the one watching the footage. But not as they are. As they were. Younger, slightly injured, wearing the clothes they hadn't worn in years. As if the mirror in the church had followed them into the video. As if watching the footage meant entering it. As if Deering didn't vanish. It simply recorded itself out of existence. And it wants you to watch. Because if you're watching, you're part of it. The names on the wall. In the wake of the now infamous Deering Local 6 transmission, a retired postal worker from Augusta, Maine, came forward with a cardboard box of old mail he'd never delivered. He'd kept it, against protocol, because something about those envelopes had always unnerved him. The postmarks were all dated between March 3rd and March 14th, 1972, right after Deering supposedly vanished. The addresses were all real, local buildings, schools, homes, but there were no zip codes, no sender addresses, and no stamps. Every envelope was sealed, and every one of them, when opened, contained only a name, nothing else. Just a name, printed, black ink, courier typeface, centered on the page. Some names were familiar, listed in the Deering census records. Others weren't. Some had been children, others elders. But what chilled investigators was that several of the names matched people who had never lived in Maine. In fact, some had been dead for decades before 1972. Others hadn't even been born yet. Inside one envelope, Rebecca Lynn Mays, born 1990, Ohio. Another, Tariq E. Windsor, born 2015, Alberta, Canada. Yet another, Emily Hartz, with no record of her ever existing, except in a police report dated 2003 about a phantom patient who appeared on a hospital stretcher for exactly 3 minutes before vanishing in front of 14 witnesses. There were 137 envelopes. The man said he'd found them bundled inside his sorting crate one day. No explanation, no tracking number, no request for delivery. He kept them in his garage, too disturbed to ask questions. After watching a grainy bootleg of the Local 6 footage in a conspiracy forum, he realized something that made his skin crawl. He had seen one of the names on one of the TV screens in the archive room scene. Not on the screen itself, but taped to the side of the monitor, handwritten in red marker. R.L. Mays, loop verified. The footage had been paused at the right second. 1 frame later, it was gone. Investigators took the box. And in 2009, a linguist cryptographer named Elliot Crane began cataloging the names. He noticed that when arranged in the order of their envelope codes, small imprints on the bottom right of each sheet, the first letter of each name spelled a sentence. The wall knows who's watching at first. It seemed like a prank, an elaborate ARG, a viral hoax that had grown teeth over time. But then something unexplainable happened. In the basement of the old Deering City Hall, a building once rumored to be the administrative heart of the town's missing year, investigators found a chamber behind a locked boiler room panel. Inside, a long curved wall, concrete, smooth, covered from floor to ceiling with names etched in the surface. Hundreds, thousands, no paint, no pen, just deep engravings as if carved with precision tools. Some were small, others massive. Some names had check marks beside them. Others were underlined. But again, many names had no logical connection to Deering. One etched name read, Celia Trask minus 2021, a woman who wouldn't go missing until nearly 50 years after the town had disappeared. Investigators were baffled, but one of them, a young assistant named Harper, noticed something else. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through the digital copy of the Local 6 footage, pausing on each frame in the archive room scene, noticing the reflections. On one of the monitors, barely visible, was a reflection of the chamber they were now standing in. Same shape, same markings, except the reflection showed more names than were actually on the wall, names not yet carved, including hers. It was there, underlined. Harper J. Ellison, loop pending, her legs gave out. She dropped the phone. The signal in the room vanished. Equipment scrambled. Every flashlight flickered off for exactly 3 minutes and 21 seconds. And when the light returned, one new name had been added to the wall, dated that day, underlined, loop confirmed. And Harper was gone. No trace, no body, no explanation. Just her badge, resting on the floor in the exact spot where her name had been etched. It was now glowing faintly, warm to the touch, as if just carved. The broadcast nobody aired. By the time Harper Ellison's sudden disappearance began circulating through underground forums and suppressed FOIA logs, a new wave of obsession bloomed among those who had followed the Deering case for years. Not just because another person had vanished, but because just days before her investigation into the engraved wall, she had made a singular claim in a now-deleted interview. There's one more tape. No one has ever seen it, not even the families. The tape, she said, wasn't on any known list of evidence. It didn't belong to the local 6-footage batch or the library reels. It had never aired. In fact, she believed it wasn't even filmed by Deering's surveillance team. She called it the Apex Broadcast, a legend that had haunted internal FCC chatter for decades. It started in 1993 in a regional weather station in Colorado. A routine technician was inspecting analog backups during a tower calibration and stumbled upon a sealed beta tape buried in a mislabeled crate. No markings, no ID, just the words, Apex, the 6th of April 1972. Do not duplicate Curious, the tech played it, and never came back to work again. According to his roommate, he returned home shaken, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. He said nothing, packed a bag, booked a one-way ticket to Puerto Escondido, Mexico. He was last seen walking into the ocean at dusk, left his clothes on the beach, wallet on top. The tape was passed along, from tech to collector to researcher, but nobody kept it for long. Every viewer reported the same thing, lights flickering during playback, unexplained whispers caught on external microphones. And most disturbingly, you would see yourself in the footage, not your reflection, you standing in the background, somewhere in the frame, often partially blurred, often staring directly at the lens, as if the broadcast was watching you back. And then, at some point in the footage, a split-second frame would flash. A room, windowless, padded walls, a VHS monitor, a metal chair facing the screen, and a sign taped to the door. Viewers must finish. No one had ever made it past that frame. Some viewers claimed the monitor in the video turned on just before they turned it off, playing whatever they had just been watching. Harper believed this Apex broadcast was the trigger, the final signal Deering sent before severing itself from time. She thought that the video didn't show the town's destruction, but its transition. Her working theory, which she presented in a closed symposium in 2007, of which only fragments survive, suggested that Deering had found a way to broadcast itself into a non-linear state, a town becoming a frequency, one not bound by space or time or cause and effect, one that remembers who's watching it. 3 years after Harper vanished, an anonymous DVD was mailed to her sister's house. The case was blank, no return address. The disc was labeled only April 6. Her sister Erin was no conspiracy theorist, but grief had made her open to closure. She pressed play. At first, it was static, then faint audio, then what looked like a school hallway, locker-lined, familiar. Then, Erin saw herself in the video, at 12 years old, holding a toy rabbit, standing next to Harper, both girls waiting for their mother outside the principal's office. It was real. They had been there, but no camera had ever been present. No one had ever filmed that memory. And yet, here it was, playing out second by second, in full detail, until the image stuttered, flickered, and the hallway lights shut off. The screen went black. Then, text appeared, pixelated, center-aligned. Do you remember now? Erin screamed. The lights in her apartment surged. Her dog began barking uncontrollably. She shut off the DVD player, and the moment she did, every screen in the house lit up, all showing the same thing, a live feed of her apartment. From an angle she couldn't identify, the TV, the laptop, her phone, even the microwave display screen flickered. Then one final line, Viewers must finish. Erin fled. The DVD was lost in a fire days later. An electrical short burned down half her apartment. But before that, she uploaded a grainy clip of the last minute of footage to a Fringe Video Archive forum. Thousands tried to decode it. Some claimed you could see Deering's town square at 104. Others heard a reversed hymn in the audio when slowed down. One user, now institutionalized, said he counted 14 figures in the hallway, none of them children, and all of them wearing masks made from TV screens. Each screen displayed the face of someone watching, but no one knows where the original broadcast came from. The metadata is scrambled. The disk's origin? Untraceable. Only one thing remains constant across every copy. The final screen always shows your name in the credits, no matter who you are, no matter how many times you've watched. And next to your name? Loop in progress. The coordinates beneath the skin. It began with a hiker. October 17th, 2019. Just northeast of the Nevada border, beyond the old salt flats. A region marked Survey Incomplete on state maps. He was looking for meteorite fragments, part of a geology hobby. He had no idea he was within 10 miles of what some claimed was Deering's last known perimeter. The sun was setting. His compass was useless, spinning slowly. His GPS dropped to 0 bars. The air felt electric, like the moment before a lightning strike, but no storm was forecast. And then he tripped. Not over a rock, but over a door. Embedded in the earth. Steel. Bolted. Completely flush with the ground. No markings, except a faint engraving near the handle. Barely visible. The 6th of April 72 to 3:33 a.m. He didn't try to open it. He ran. 3 days later, he reported it to authorities. By the time anyone returned, there was no door. But where he claimed it had been, buried beneath the desert soil, searchers uncovered a single object. A leather-bound medical file, burned at the edges, sealed in plastic. The name on it? Dr. Lenera Hallberg. The same surgeon who had lived in Deering. The same one whose obituary had been printed in 1965, 7 years before the town vanished. Inside the file, 14 patient entries. Each handwritten. Each labeled non-linear case. And each containing one identical procedure. Coordinate implantation. Axial dermal layer. In plain terms, something had been surgically embedded beneath their skin. Coordinates, not GPS, not map points. They followed no known grid. But when graphed together, those numbers formed a perfect spiral, one that converged on a central point, the elementary school, the same one from the surveillance tapes, the same one seen in the Apex broadcast, the same one where no door ever opened, but movement kept appearing on infrared sensors. Those patient files were real. They were authenticated by handwriting experts, and Dr. Hallberg's signature matched multiple pre-1970 forms. But here's the impossible part. Each entry was dated after the town had vanished. 1975, 1978, 1983, even 1991. All from a woman who was declared dead nearly a decade before Deering disappeared. All tracking patients no one could trace. Each patient had the same post-op note: behavioral looping present, self-recognition delay increasing, temporal bleed visible on camera only. It was as if these patients were flickering through timelines, aware of something they couldn't fully remember, yet caught in repeating patterns. And then came the most disturbing discovery of all. The final page. No patient name. No ID, just a scan of a tattoo, a spiral, with a single phrase curved around its edges. You are here. Analysts enhanced the scan, looked for placement. It wasn't on an arm or a leg. It was from someone's eyelid. The inside of it? The tattoo was only visible when the eye was closed, like a marker, a sign left for dreamers. One theory emerged, called convergent recall syndrome. It posits that Deering survivors, or observers, may have encoded parts of the town into their own bodies, unknowingly. That skin, blood, and bone could hold memory. And that the spiral was more than a symbol. It was a navigation map, not across geography, but through dimensional re-entry. That Deering didn't vanish. It recurred. In pockets. In seconds. In places behind the places we believe are real. The town wasn't erased. It was folded. And people like Harper, like Aaron, like the hiker, they'd stepped across that fold without realizing it. Until it was too late. Months after the file leaked, thousands of people began inspecting their own scars. Their moles, their dreams. Some began drawing spirals on their walls. Others tattooed them on their bodies. One man filmed himself blinking rapidly in a mirror, convinced his reflection lagged by 0.3 seconds. A woman in Serbia claimed she saw a blackboard behind her eyelids every time she prayed. A chalkboard, with the same word written over and over, review. In a post on the now-defunct forum Broadcast Recall, one user said, "What if we weren't watching the surveillance? What if the surveillance is watching us? What if it's waiting for us to close our eyes long enough, so it can finish showing us what we forgot?" The dream frequency. It always started the same way. A hallway, fluorescent lights flickering, the soft hum of a projector, dust motes dancing in the air. And that hum, a low, constant frequency that didn't feel like sound, but presence. Thousands of people, unconnected, unrelated, began reporting the same dream after watching the leaked surveillance footage or reading about the Deering disappearance. They described a school corridor that never ends, even when they turn corners, drawings taped to the walls, always made in crayon, but none of them with names. A red locker that buzzes when they walk past, a single announcement speaker that whispers, "It's almost time," but the bell never rings, and always the same exit sign above a door they can never reach. Psychologists dismiss this as shared suggestion. A mass psychological phenomenon. Paranoia mixed with internet culture. Until the frequency analysis came back. A sound technician from a film restoration team was hired to clean up old Deering tapes, trying to remove the static. He noticed something buried in the background of the footage. Not quite audio, not quite noise. More like a pulse. He isolated the waveform. It repeated every 11.33 seconds. And when he played it back on a loop at a reduced speed, several things happened. His lights dimmed for a full second. His computer rebooted, and the speaker whispered, in a voice not his, the words, "I'm still in class." That technician never returned to work. Researchers later dubbed this signal the dream frequency. It exists just outside human hearing range, a subharmonic vibration that affects the brain's temporal lobe and pineal gland. It's not a sound. It's an instruction. An exposure to it, even for a few seconds, seems to trigger memory overlap with events that cannot be proven to have occurred. Dreams become vivid. Details repeat. The hallway returns. But this time, something follows. One subject, known only as EK, participated in an underground experiment called Silent Broadcast. She was exposed to a looped version of the surveillance footage from Deering Elementary for 96 hours. On the fourth day, she stopped responding to questions. She began drawing identical blueprints over and over again, not of the school, but of a building that didn't exist on any map. A building shaped like a spiral tower with no doors, only windows. Windows that looked inward. She spoke a single phrase repeatedly for 36 hours. I saw them file us in. Not alphabetically, chronologically. When asked what she meant, she whispered, by memory, not by name. She vanished 2 days later from a locked observation room. The only thing left on her mattress, A crumpled school paper titled, "What I Want to Be When I Grow Up." It was blank, except for one sentence at the bottom. I already was. The deeper investigators went, the more they realized the footage was never meant to be seen. It wasn't documenting the town. It was broadcasting to it, as if each frame was a message, echoing into time, not from the past, but from a looping present. A time signature caught between ticks of the clock, where people didn't remember who they were, only what they were supposed to feel. That hallway, that speaker, that door they can't reach, and the figure waiting just outside frame, always blurry, always watching. A new theory emerged, broadcast-induced re-entry. It suggested that memory can act like a doorway, that by remembering the dream, the hallway, the spiral, the frequency, we are pulling something back. That the signal isn't just reaching us, it's using us to return. Not all at once, but through fragments, through dreams. Through those who linger too long on channel 72.3, the one that only plays static until 3:33 a.m., a child's drawing of the town, with no exits and only one message written in red crayon. You are the last bell, the drawing that didn't age. It was supposed to be a glitch. Just a frame, a single flicker in the surveillance feed from camera 4, a barely visible, and dismissed at first as corruption on the analog tape. But it kept returning. Every 237th frame, to be exact. Researchers who scanned the entire reel, frame by frame, noticed it after several passes. A hand-drawn image, done in red crayon, appearing for less than 0.4 seconds in a corner of the screen. Faint, flickering. They enhanced it, paused it, printed it. It was unmistakably a child's drawing of a town, viewed from above. Roads shaped like a spiral, buildings with no names, and in the center, a red square with a tiny clock tower. No people, no cars. Just one word scrawled in shaky handwriting beneath the image. Still here. The image became known as the Deering Map. It was later compared with topographical overlays of the actual town layout before the disappearance. The match was exact, down to the curvature of alleyways and placement of mailboxes. But here's the impossible part. Carbon dating of the printout, once transferred to acetate by a researcher named Carla Morton, showed no degradation, no age at all. It was chemically fresh, like it had just been drawn. But no one had touched it in weeks, and no crayons had been used in the lab. The drawing was only the beginning. Once the team knew where to look, every 237th frame, they found more. Another image, a handprint too small for an adult, pressed against a black window. Behind it, a hallway filled with fog. Another, a lunch tray, untouched, with a name tag beside it, Eli J. The same name carved into one of the school desks, found years earlier in the excavation of Deering's underground sub-basement. A name that had never appeared on any town records, census lists, or school rosters. The most disturbing frame, however, appeared after the 17th full cycle of 237 frame loops. Frame 4029. It showed a chalkboard. On it, written in white, "Stop recording." It's already inside. From that moment on, the footage became interactive. Not in the traditional sense, but certain researchers began noticing that their own names appeared on later frames, as if added after their involvement began. One intern, Amy Becker, saw her initials written on the gym scoreboard in frame 5213. Another, technician's birth date appeared etched into the playground slide. One physicist who had been overseeing waveform analysis saw a snapshot of his childhood home taped to a wall inside the surveillance room in a frame that couldn't possibly have been filmed before the town vanished. They weren't analyzing the footage anymore. The footage was analyzing them. This discovery triggered what would later be called the observer contamination event. Researchers exposed to the footage began dreaming in sequential scenes, as if all experiencing the same narrative in different chapters. One reported a dream in which she walked through the cafeteria and found an old projector playing a reel titled, "What Happened Here is Waiting for You." Another dreamed of the town's gas station, where every pump counted backwards. As she watched, the total read 1972.0. And one dreamer, a sleep study participant, claimed she saw the drawing again. Only this time, it moved. The roads curled. The red square pulsed, and a door opened where there had been none. A child stepped out, holding a sign. "I drew this for you." She asked him who he was. He replied, "I'm your memory, but you're not mine." Then came the final revelation. Using high-frequency spectral reversal, a linguist team ran the entire tape in reverse, stripping the visual layer and isolating only light and time artifacts. Within the distortion, just below the static threshold, an image emerged, a looping frame of the same drawing, except now it showed the town with shadows crawling from its center outward. And beneath it, this message scratched into the celluloid: "You left the town." But the town never left you. A red square in the center, and a clock with no hands. The cartographers of memory. It started innocently, as an academic experiment. After the discovery of the crayon sketch embedded within the 237th frames, researchers decided to test a theory. What if those exposed to the footage could reconstruct the lost town's layout purely from memory? Not factual memory, but resonance, impressions left behind after viewing the subliminal images. What the team dubbed residual spatial echo. The test involved 9 participants. None of them had seen photos of Deering's original town design. They had no access to the blueprints. All they were given was this prompt: draw the place you think you've been before, but can't remember leaving. That was it. The results were chilling. All 9 drew spirals. Not a single grid, not a single square-based layout, no suburban cul-de-sacs. Each map was a spiraling labyrinth, just like the original Deering overlay. Each one placed a red-colored building at the center. 7 of them included clock towers. 3 included rail tracks that vanished off the page. 2 drawings included handwritten annotations. Don't enter past the 3rd circle. It keeps moving. But the most disturbing similarity? None of the drawings had exits. The team dismissed it at first. A statistical anomaly, perhaps. But the replication occurred again with the second batch, this time with 21 volunteers. Same spiral layouts, same red building. Even stranger, the drawings from the second group overlapped perfectly with those from the first group when overlaid digitally, as if they had mapped out the same geography from different starting points, different memories. A pattern began to emerge. It wasn't just Deering. Using this unintentional cartographic method, researchers discovered similar layouts matched to other historical disappearances. Green Hollow, Virginia, vanished 1956. Population 48, Millridge. Oregon, vanished 1968. Population 102, Valentin. Missouri, vanished 1934. Population unknown. Each town had experienced mysterious vanishing events, and each now aligned with the collective reconstructions from the participants. The red building, it turned out, wasn't unique. It appeared across every site. Different forms: a church, a school, a courthouse, a train station, but always in the same place, the center of the spiral. One woman, Janelle Reed, a former school teacher, became a focal point of the research. Her drawings were extraordinarily detailed, as if recalling not just structures, but events. Children running. A bakery with "closed forever" carved into its window. A man in a hat standing still at every corner. She drew him 9 separate times, each in a different location, but always watching. Her final drawing was a spiral with concentric layers, and on the outermost ring she wrote, If you remember it, you were part of it. When asked to explain what she meant, she grew visibly pale and said, "I used to teach in Millridge." But that's impossible. I grew up in Nevada. Millridge had vanished 5 years before her birth. Other participants began experiencing symptoms. Not physical, but cognitive shifts. A man dreamed of a hallway that seemed to go on forever, until he turned and realized the hallway was inside his own home. Another woman reported seeing the town's spiral layout faintly glowing on her living room wall every night at 3:12 a.m. Two reported losing time, gaps in memory, where they found themselves drawing on walls, napkins, and mirrors without realizing it. One researcher wrote in her journal, "We're not just remembering the town. The town is remembering itself, through us." Then came the final test. One group of participants was given a deliberate red herring, a fake map of Deering, built in a grid. They were told it was real and asked to study it for a week. Afterward, they were instructed to draw the layout from memory. None of them reproduced the fake grid. All reverted back to spirals. Some even added more detail than before, drawing figures with no faces, doors without knobs, and staircases that went up but never ended. It became clear that this was no longer an exercise in recollection. It was becoming invasion. The drawings weren't recreations. They were activations. Researchers theorized the red building was a cognitive anchor, a sort of mnemonic virus that latched onto spatial memory and rewrote it. But there was one final variable they didn't anticipate. When the drawings from Deering, Millridge, Green Hollow, and Valentin were all overlaid, perfectly aligned, spiraling inward, the center of every red building shared the exact same coordinates when adjusted for time and magnetic declination. A real-world location, 371355N, 1193744, La Forested area in California. Uninhabited, no structures, no documented disappearances, until a team was sent to investigate. They never reported back. Only one piece of evidence was recovered, a surveillance tape found inside a weatherproof container. Footage showed a red building, unfamiliar in style, and a chalkboard inside with this phrase written in white: "If you see this, you've already been here." The below-floor footage. When the coordinates aligned from the memory maps of 4 vanished towns, a quiet urgency took hold of the research team. They secured permissions, funding, and gear in record time. 3 specialists made up the first expedition unit: Dr. Mark Delaney, geospatial analyst; Tanya Ruiz, neurocartographer; Dylan Shu, archival documentarian. Their last transmission was dated June 9, 2023, 5:46 p.m. PST. They had reached the coordinates. They were preparing to descend beneath a collapsed foundation in the forest, possibly a remnant of an old shelter. They joked over comms about finding a treehouse for ghosts. That was the last voice transmission ever received. What happened next came only from the footage they left behind. The camera was recovered 6 days later by a secondary team, the rescue unit. They found it inside a metal crate, buried under loose dirt. There was no sign of the original crew, no gear, no prints, no disturbance in the soil, except for a small spiral of dead grass above the crate, as if scorched from within. The footage inside the camera was undamaged. It recorded 4 hours and 17 minutes of uninterrupted video. What it captured was ... impossible. The footage begins in pitch black. Only the breathing of the crew is heard. Whispers, calculations, jokes, an occasional curse. Then, a sudden shift in audio. The room inhales, like a vacuum in reverse. And then, light, flickering, red-toned, as if cast from an old gas lantern. They are no longer in the forest. At least, not in any forest recognizable to the human mind. The walls pulse. There's no ceiling, yet no sky. A low ambient hum drones beneath every sound. They walk down a hallway that should not exist. Tree roots curled like veins through concrete, and doors at even intervals, but none open. Delenn mutters, "This wasn't on any of the diagrams." They hadn't seen diagrams, but somehow they all agreed on that statement. They reach a chamber. At the center stands the red building. Only it's miniature, no more than 5 feet tall, but identical in architecture to the one seen in every memory map. It sits on a rotating platform. Every minute, it turns a full circle. There's no mechanism visible. It simply rotates. As they approach, the camera shakes. The audio warps. Time stutters. Dylan screams. Tanya collapses to her knees, whispering names that don't appear on any known registry. Dr. Delaney, however, walks toward the red structure. The final 17 minutes of footage are surreal. The red building opens. Not physically. It glitches open, like video distortion peeling it away frame by frame. Inside, there's a single chair. On it, a reel projector. Dr. Delaney loads the camera's film into the projector, but they never filmed with reels. The projector turns on by itself. It casts images on the far wall of the chamber. Images from Deering, Millridge, Valentin. All towns appear to shift in real time, as if the footage is alive, adjusting as it is being watched. Then, finally, people, dozens, hundreds, faces moving through windows, vanishing behind curtains, standing still in open fields, eyes locked on the viewer. They are not reacting to being filmed. They are watching back. Then Tanya says, "These are not memories. They're recordings of the future." Delaney doesn't respond. He is mouthing something. The camera zooms in on him. He is repeating a phrase. "We are placeholders. We are the bridge." Then, black silence. Then, as if the camera restarts, a final static-filled frame appears for 0.7 seconds. A handwritten message on a whiteboard in familiar red marker. What vanishes is not lost. It's stored. This frame has been verified to not exist on the camera's physical tape, as if it was inserted after the camera was buried. The rescue team left the site within hours. 2 of them refused to speak after. 1 left the country. All refused further interviews. Today, no traces of the red building or the tunnel system remain at those coordinates. Satellite imagery now shows a clearing, perfectly circular, where no vegetation grows. And every night, at exactly 3:03 a.m. PST, the nearest surveillance tower to that region, to 13 kilometers away, begins to stream 12 minutes of silent, grayscale footage. The signal can't be disabled. The footage shows a hallway with no end, spiral blueprints, a red door, a projector playing to no audience, and finally, 3 shadows, standing, watching the Belgium tape. The parcel arrived without a return address, no postage, no customs documentation. It was hand-delivered. That much was confirmed. Footage from the campus mailroom shows a figure in a dark coat, hood up, wearing white gloves. They never looked at the camera. The university in question was the Universiteit Libre de Bruxelles, specifically addressed to the Department of Historical Paradox Studies, a department that had technically been disbanded in 1989, though some professors still received internal memos with its name. Inside the package, a 16mm film reel labeled Continuation, Deering. A note written in Flemish with 1 line. They will not remember, but they have always known. A small black key. No known lock ever matched its design. What truly stunned the faculty, however, was the date written on the reel's metadata label, footage captured, September 5th, 2027. It was still 2025. The university brought in digital archivist Dr. Lisette Kremer, known for her work decoding visual anomalies and recovered post-war propaganda reels. She was cautious at first, suspecting a prank, but once the reel was loaded, projected, and frame captured, What she found disrupted every assumption. The reel opens with footage from inside a house. It is not the red building, but it bears unmistakable elements. Red-stained wood grain on the doors. Wallpaper pattern in the shape of interlocking spirals. A low-frequency tone pulses beneath the film audio, an identical hum to what was recorded beneath the Nevada forest site. On the screen, a young girl appears. She is sitting at a dining table, eating soup. There are no jump cuts, no edits. She occasionally looks directly at the camera. She never speaks. Behind her, on a wall calendar, is a clear date, Monday, September 5th, 2027. This is followed by footage of a classroom, seemingly underground. Children are seated, facing a blackboard, but none of them move. The teacher stands, writing symbols not part of any known alphabet. They flicker and rearrange even as they're being written, as if the chalk is altering the laws of time while it touches the board. The children begin to mouth words in unison, though the footage has no audio. Kramer hired a lip reader. The translation? Memory is an error. Recordings are the truth. Next, the footage shows a hospital room, empty but humming with machinery. Every monitor shows vital signs, heart rate, breathing, but there are no patients. A nurse enters frame, carrying a clipboard. On it, we see the names of patients from Deering, Millridge, and Grantham, all towns previously confirmed non-existent. Yet now they are patients. The nurse sets the clipboard down, walks to the center of the room, and opens a wall panel. Behind it, more patient files identical in format to those found behind the main hospital wall, again, referencing disappearances from the 70s. This overlap could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. But what shook Dr. Kramer to her core came in the final 2 minutes. The film shifts suddenly, colors distort, sound stutters, and we are shown a newspaper dated October 2027. It contains an article about the Belgium University's research division being shuttered due to unethical surveillance activity, referencing leaked footage. This was 2 years in the future, and in the final frame of the film, frozen mid-glitch, is a distorted image of Dr. Kramer herself, watching the reel, wearing the same clothes she wore that day in the projection lab. She had never been filmed. How did her image end up on a reel 2 years older than the day she watched it? There was no footage in the lab, no camera, nothing that could explain how it was captured, let alone encoded into celluloid. And then the film burned. Not in the projector, not from heat. It began to degrade before her eyes, the emulsion liquefying, warping into black static. Within 30 seconds, it was unrecognizable. Within 2 minutes, it had disintegrated into a pile of ash that left no traceable chemical compound. The key, still intact. But since then, 12 identical keys have been reported found in disparate locations. One in a flooded cathedral in Argentina, one beneath a retired subway station in Osaka, another inside a sealed filing cabinet in a closed New Jersey psychiatric facility. Each key is stamped with one word, record. None open any known lock. All emit a low-frequency pulse when exposed to static interference. And all, when viewed under ultraviolet light, reveal coordinates to towns that should not exist. The village that dreamed in broadcast. The spiral showed up again, this time carved into a snow-covered stone just beyond the Kolyma River basin, deep in Siberia. Satellite scans taken in the 1980s had long marked the area as uninhabitable. No settlements, no transport access, no reason for attention. But in 2023, an expedition led by a group of cartographers from the Czech Geospatial Institute stumbled upon an anomaly in electromagnetic readings, an invisible signal, pulsing at 11.3 hertz, emanating from a fixed point in the wilderness. It matched the frequency found beneath the Nevada forest and the main hospital home. The coordinates aligned with the ultraviolet code from one of the Belgium keys. When the team arrived, what they found should not have been there. A village. It wasn't abandoned. It wasn't exactly populated either. Instead, it seemed preserved, frozen in time. 15 wooden homes, a central square with a collapsed well, and most notably, a rusting broadcast tower, tall, crooked, with a tangle of wires that reached into the ground like roots. The houses were furnished, but with technology decades behind. Analog radios, reel-to-reel tape decks, old Soviet-era phones, all disconnected, but none covered in dust, as if someone had cleaned the place recently. Inside one home, they found journals written in a mix of Cyrillic and an unidentifiable code, again resembling the chalkboard symbols from the Belgium reel. But what disturbed the team most was that each journal entry ended with the same 3 lines. We dream in rotation. We wake in silence. The watchers remember for us. One of the expedition's linguists, Tamara Volkov, began to decode the symbols. Using context from Czech, Russian, and Estonian dialects, she discovered a rough cipher that revealed entries describing collective dreaming. Apparently, the villagers believed that from 1970 to 1973, they were part of a program called Sonuvskaya Rets, loosely translated as the Dream Grid. The tower, according to the entries, was a conduit, not for signal, but for consciousness. Each winter night, at exactly 2:11 a.m., the tower emitted an inaudible signal. Villagers would gather in their homes, lie in bed, and fall asleep simultaneously. They claimed to enter the same dream, see the same images, hear the same voices. And those dreams, they said, were not theirs. They were from people who had disappeared. Men, women, children. Their thoughts, memories, regrets played like stories behind closed eyes. Volkov hypothesized that the dream data may have been broadcast from surveillance devices, possibly repurposed Cold War tech. But one entry shattered that theory. Last night, I saw a forest, red building, children walking backwards through the door. I smelled soup, but there was no pot. A woman whispered my name in English. This was decades before the Nevada site was discovered, and yet the imagery was identical, down to the red structure. When the expedition attempted to collect samples from the tower, a magnetic field disrupted their electronics. Compass needles spun, camera batteries drained, and on the final night, one of the team, an intern named Milo, vanished from his tent. His sleeping bag was zipped from the inside. No tracks, no struggle. Only one thing left behind, a cassette tape labeled Milo 03. When played, it produced static at first. Then, a faint voice, Milo's, whispering something over and over. The broadcast is awake. The watchers are real. We're not mapping land. We're mapping memory. The Czech team evacuated. Authorities sealed the report. To this day, the Siberian village remains off maps, and any drone footage near its location flickers, distorts, or loops. All 12 Belgium keys found so far have referenced places like this, and each one seems to connect a piece of the larger network. Deering's disappearance in 1972, the Nevada forest signals, the Maine hospital wall files, the Belgian reel, and now the village of dreamed broadcasts. But the mystery deepens. In 2025, an engineer at a shortwave radio archive in Berlin intercepted a low-frequency audio pulse that mirrored the seal. 11.3 Hz signal. Buried within the pulse was an audio spectrogram. When visualized, the waveform revealed the face of a girl, the same girl from the Belgium reel. Her eyes closed, mouth slightly open, as if still dreaming. This same waveform is now looping every night at 2:11 a.m., the original Siberian signal time, but now it's heard on global shortwave frequencies. It ends with a single tone. That tone has now been discovered embedded in an old 1972 surveillance tape from the town that vanished. It was rediscovered by accident. In a locked sublevel of a defunct news station in Knoxville, Tennessee, a restoration technician named Andrew Keller stumbled across a mislabeled U-Matic video reel. Its tag read, "Local B-roll 1972, weather coverage, standard stuff." But as Andrew ran the tape for digitization, something was off. It began with static, then a flicker, then silence. No music, no time code. Just a frame, a black and white image of a street lamp surrounded by heavy fog. No movement, no sound. Just that frame, held for 18 minutes. He thought it was an error in the tape, a freeze, until, at minute 18:17, the lamp blinked. Once, and then the image changed. Now the frame showed a bench in what looked like a town square. The camera was locked, unmoving, but there was motion within the frame. People walking, but walking in reverse. Backward steps, lips moving without sound. Birds flapping wings, but never taking off. The timestamp appeared. Top left corner. February 11th, 1972, 2:11 a.m. The exact time the Siberian village claimed their broadcast began. Andrew fast-forwarded and discovered that every 18 minutes, the frame would change again. Each time, a new scene. Each time, a fragment of a town. But not a town. The town. When matched against archived municipal layouts, street lamp designs, and bench configurations, the tape's images perfectly aligned with the infrastructure of Camden, Pennsylvania, the town that was officially declared demolished for floodplain risk in 1973. But Camden was never flooded, and the last census taken in 1971 counted 837 residents. By spring 1972, there were zero. No bodies, no relocation records, no evacuation alerts. Only absence. The government claimed it was poor record keeping, but the tape tells another story. By minute 97, the video displayed a school hallway, lockers, bulletin boards, everything intact. At the end of the hall, a girl stood motionless. Long dark hair, school uniform, but she didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react, until the hallway lights flickered once. She turned slowly toward the camera, and in a single frame that almost escaped detection, her mouth moved. Andrew enhanced the tape, frame by frame, overlaid spectral analysis, used lip-reading software. Her mouth had formed 3 words: "We are filmed." Panicked, Andrew reached out to archivists at the Smithsonian Media Recovery Department. But when they arrived, the tape was gone. The hard drive containing the digitized copy had been wiped. Security footage of the building that night? Corrupted. But here's the strange part. One intern, Julia, had made a personal backup of the footage earlier that day, specifically because she was intrigued by the foggy street lamp frame. She uploaded a still frame to an obscure lost media forum to ask about the origin. Within hours, her account was banned, the post removed, and her phone began receiving blocked number calls, playing a single tone on voicemail. That tone was spectrally identical to the 11. 3 Hertz pulse discovered in the Siberian village, the main hospital, and Nevada forest. Every attempt to retrieve the footage since has failed, but a single fragment remains, a frame showing the town's main square, with a marquee in the background that reads, "The watchers see all Act 2 tonight at 2:11. This is the final confirmed image from the Camden reel. And based on the mapping done by researchers since, it appears each surveillance feed was not capturing real-time footage, but instead, moments trapped in looped time, curated for playback, like scenes from a film. And here's where it gets chilling. A metadata file found in the restoration software Andrew used showed this note embedded in the raw file header. Frame index 221A, real batch, Observer 9. Curated date, July 29th, 2025. That's a future date, months from now. And the term Observer 9 matches a folder name found on the recovered Belgium tapes drive. This confirms the growing theory. The disappearances, the replays, the broadcast signals, the dreams, they are not random. They are scenes selected by someone or something, edited, projected, re-watched. The towns didn't vanish. They were archived. If our memories, towns, people, even time itself are being observed, edited, and stored, then what happens when a new reel begins? The final playback. There's a strange stillness in towns like Camden. If you visit the ruins, what little is left behind crumbling fences and faded, nitrogen monoxide trespassing signs, there's a silence that doesn't feel like peace. It's the silence of a place waiting to be noticed again, waiting to be replayed. Because the theory now isn't just that these places were archived. It's that they're not finished, not forgotten, not lost, just paused. And there's a reason the surveillance footage from 1972 never turned off. In 2023, a group of graduate researchers working on a project called Phantom Broadcasts of the 20th Century received anonymous footage on a portable SSD. There was no return address. Only a post-it note attached, written in sharp black ink. End of reel, start of loop. Inside the drive, 6.4 terabytes of video data. Footage of towns, all seemingly abandoned. All with timestamps from the early 70s, some from 1993, others with no dates at all. In every video, the same elements repeated. A clock stuck at 2:11 a.m., a shadow. In the corner of the frame that moved with the camera, a low pulsing hum at 11. 3 hertz. When researchers compiled the footage and overlaid the images, they realized something horrifying. Every town shown, when stitched together, formed a perfect mirror replica of a single real location. A known city. Not in the U.S., not in Europe, but beneath the South Pacific Ocean, off a shelf near the Kermadec Trench, where no land mass exists today. The coordinates? 3,214, S17,927W, mapped into the ocean, but rendered in detail through the footage. Buildings, schools, parks, a town underwater, or maybe never on water to begin with. Maybe just stored somewhere between frequencies. 2 weeks after receiving the SSD, one of the researchers, Michael Corr, began sleepwalking. Always at 2:11 a.m., he would wake up in front of a blank wall in his apartment. Each morning in different clothes, each morning with scratches on his arms. He set up a camera, and what it recorded was beyond comprehension. Michael would rise from bed, walk to the wall, and gesture as if pulling a panel open, but nothing was there. Until the 11th night, the panel opened, and what was inside was a screen, playing one of the surveillance reels. And in it, Michael himself, standing in a version of his room that had no windows, no doors, no exit. This was the turning point. It became clear the reels weren't just storing footage of the past. They were capturing the echoes of lives that hadn't happened yet, or had already looped, which means every town, every disappearance, every timestamp, every pulse was part of something larger, a system, a mechanism designed not to document life, but to rerun it, test it, observe how it reacts. We weren't being watched for curiosity. We were being studied for pattern recognition. So what now, if the final reel has played, if the loop is restarting? What does that mean for us? Look around your town. Is there a building that seems out of place? A street that always echoes, even without footsteps? A lamppost that flickers at the same time every night? Start paying attention. Because maybe your street is next. Maybe your life is being captured, not as it is, but as it was meant to be edited, the town didn't vanish. It's waiting for its next showing. And somewhere, the camera is still rolling.